Horror in the High Desert 3, FIREWATCH, is, as it says, the third in the Horror in the High Desert series, which has become a bit of a lo-fi phenomenon in the horror community. I happened upon the first film by chance and was impressed at the compelling story, authentic performances, unsettling mystery, and genuinely scary moments. The follow-up, entitled Minerva, felt like filmmaker Dutch Marich had perfected the concept he introduced in the first film and nudged the story a skosh more in the direction of uncovering some idea of what this strangeness actually is by following the disappearances of two other women who had strange encounters with some kind of malevolent force in the desert. I'd been waiting for the third installment to drop for quite a while, but for some reason I missed the release of Horror in the High Desert 3, FIREWATCH, when it came out earlier this year. So imagine my surprise when the film came up in my Amazon Prime queue. Of course I rushed to see it, and here's what I thought of it. Horror in the High Desert 3, FIREWATCH, is new streaming on Amazon Prime from Luminol Entertainment. It's directed and written by Dutch Marich. The story of the disappearance of hiking influencer Gary Hinge, played by Eric Menzies, created a flurry of interest, resulting in many an amateur sleuth venturing out into the high desert of Nevada searching for answers. But influencer Oscar Mendoza, played by Marco Antonio Parra, believes he knows what happened to Hinge. Armed with his own camera, Oscar travels further into the desert than any have gone before to uncover the truth. But is he truly prepared for what the desert has in store for him? Now, if you haven't seen the first two installments of this series, I wholly recommend them as truly terrifying mockumentaries, or as I call them, shockumentaries. Kissing cousins with the found footage subgenre, shockumentaries don't adhere to the same criteria as found footage films. Shockumentaries are produced by a third party. They may contain footage found, but the film has been directed, processed, and produced by the filmmaker. The footage is being represented by the documentarian as real, but because it is established that another set of hands has been on the footage, it doesn't shatter that suspension of disbelief I usually hope to achieve with genuine found footage film when music or edits show up. If you didn't already know that the Horror in the High Desert films were fiction, some might even think that they were real true crime missing person reports one might see on Netflix. Writer-director Dutch Marich does a great job of making the viewer feel like what is playing out is as authentic as it can be. While it's made to look like a documentary, he still presents the footage found as authentically as possible, though there are a few wonky edits and some music added to the footage later on as well. But my usual found footage checklist just doesn't apply to this type of film. Is this newest installment any good? Well, I would categorize this one as the weakest of the three, unfortunately. First, a minor nitpick. Subtitling the film FIREWATCH is misleading. The name has to do with forest fires that are out of control along the west coast and into the Nevada area. Oscar takes advantage of the fires to sneak into the high desert without park rangers noticing as they're busy taming the fires. But aside from a few news clips about the fires, we really don't see any of these infernos affecting this story. I get it, this is a low-budget film, and playing with fire is expensive and downright dangerous. But I think the film should have just called itself Edna, as that's the name of the location where Oscar ends up in the climax. But the fact that the film doesn't deliver the fire promised in the title is besides the point. Horror in the High Desert 3, FIREWATCH, simply isn't as scary as previous entries. There are quite a few sequences where there might be some potential for scares, but for some reason, the tension is cut just before anything scary happens. Oscar is investigating a strange sound, which sounds like 3 taps coming from an old shed. This sequence goes on for a very long time as Oscar inches towards where this sound is coming from. You hope that there's going to be a terrifying reveal, but then the film cuts to the next day. The climax involves a long descent through an underground tunnel as Oscar creeps around the stony corridors, his light barely penetrating the darkness. But even though there are sounds coming from behind him, nothing ever comes of it. The same goes for the final moments in the area known as Edna, as Oscar investigates an abandoned building. This is where something finally happens, but it comes and goes so quickly that I had to rewind numerous times to really understand just what I was seeing. And once I did, man, was that reveal a letdown and a half. On top of all of that, unlike the pair of women in the second one and Gary in the first installment, Oscar is not that likable of a protagonist. He's a cocky, middle-aged influencer who takes unnecessary risks, screws over his partner by stealing his car to go on this trip alone, and jokes about starting a big fire in the middle of an area that, according to the story, is suffering great damage from forest fires at the moment. The fact that he charges forward when things seem to be getting dangerous also feels unbelievable. Plus, during the climax, Oscar seems to know details about the things in the desert that there's no way he could know. The previous horror in the high desert entries had potent horror. The first had a wonderful slow build to a terrifying reveal in the end, while Minerva had numerous full-on fright sequences. But Firewatch is this franchise's first misstep. It fails to deliver someone to be invested in, and the scares just don't compare with the previous films. On top of all of that, it only nudges the story along in an infinitesimal way, reminiscent of the snail's pacing that went on for far too long in the Paranormal Activity franchise. 3 movies in, and there really has been no development as to what happened to Gary in the first film, let alone what the hell is going on out there in the desert. There's already a 4th installment, entitled Majesty, in the works. Firewatch didn't work for me, but I'm hoping the next one gets its groove back. Did you guys see this one? What do you guys think of the Horror in High Desert series? Let me know down in the comments. Please do me a favor and punch that like button down below. Share this video with all of your social media addicted pals. Click subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for notifications. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're